Look, I gotta be honest with y'all. I make videos all the time about why Memphis is such a great place to move to and live in, and even why 2024 might be the best year ever for you to move to Memphis. But at the same time, I know there are things that a lot of y'all just aren't gonna like, some of which might even just be deal breakers. They'll just totally even ruin the idea of moving to Memphis for you. And I'm not being honest if I don't talk about those too. So that's what this video is about. And the first one is the big one, is the one you get questions about the most. It's the one you're going to see on the news. It's the crime here in Memphis. Yes, we do have a crime problem here in Memphis, and I'm not trying to hide that or cover it up. Matter of fact, I'll tell you that in 2023, Memphis set the record. It had the highest number of homicides on record for the city in 2023. But it's important to realize that when I'm talking to you here on the channel and you're doing your research about moving to the area, I know a lot of y'all are searching for Memphis, and you're not really planning to move to the city of Memphis. So as you look around the suburbs, even if you look around the entire city, and I'll put a link down in the description to the crime map. I've linked that in other videos, but you can check the crime map and you can see this. But that crime happens, in some areas, and it doesn't happen in as much in other areas, and you can see that really good. It's a really good detailed tool that you can kind of dig down and see whatever you want to see there. But the point is this. Yes, just like most other major cities, Memphis does have crime. In some instances, Memphis may be near the top of, or the bottom, I guess, depending on how you want to put it, with how bad the crime is in some parts of the city. But just because there are parts of the city that do have a worse problem with crime do not mean that the entire city, or especially the entire metro area, has this just rampant crime problem that you can't get away from. That's just not the case, because we do have the problem here. I just want you to know that it's not the entire area. There are plenty of places you can move here in Memphis that are going to be totally safe, and you're not going to be worried about that really at all. So that's why I wanted to address it here up front, because I know that's a big one for you. And my next reason is going to fall really right in line with that, because it's a major contributing factor to crime, and that is the poverty problem that we have here in Memphis. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done around that. And unfortunately, one of the symptoms of that is the crime problem that we do have. Fortunately, there are a lot of efforts going on, and with all of the opportunity and investments coming into the area that I talk about on the video, that again, I'll put up there, that's going to help with that. You're going to bring in some relief to that. You're going to bring in opportunity to people so that they have a chance to kind of move up a little bit and get beyond the economic situation where a lot of people unfortunately are in the city right now. But looking at this realistically, I don't think you're going to solve the crime problem until you can solve the poverty problem here in Memphis. And I'll tell you, one of the saddest statistics that I found when I was looking things up to make this video was the fact that Memphis is either at the top or near the top when it comes to cities with the highest levels of child poverty. So clearly something has got to be done there. And things, fortunately, like I said, are the Grizzlies. They've got I can pull up their website so you can see they've got some programs going on to this. They've identified these problems. And there are a lot of other organizations that are tackling this. And I really, really am hopeful and optimistic that as we go forward into the future, that we're going to see these two things improve. Now, moving on to my next thing on the list, and this one is the first one I'll tell you I think is a little bit unfounded. And you see this out there, you hear this a lot, but I'll tell you why. So it's education here in the Memphis area. Now, if you look at some of the school districts, yes, especially in the city of Memphis, a lot of the schools are not going to rate as highly. If you go to great schools, you go to niche.com, you'll see that. But at the same time, you'll also see, even within, you don't even have to go out to the suburbs for this, even within the city of Memphis, you have some of the top rated schools in the entire state. So to say that you can't get good education here, to me, is totally unfounded. Now, where there is some truth to that is the fact that while you can get a great quality of education here in even the city of Memphis, or especially the Memphis area, it's not distributed evenly. So if you're moving here, it's just another reason to make sure you're doing that research and make sure you're going to those greatschools.com or niche.com, and you can dig into that. You can see reviews from parents and students that are actually in these districts that are going to give you a lot more insight really than I could, or any website really could on its own. Now, if y'all can't tell, I ain't trying to shy away from the problems that we have here in Memphis. I want to be honest and upfront with you about it so that you can make that decision on, do I want to move to Memphis? Or if I do move here, what do you need to be aware of? I'm trying to make sure you know these things. So if you like that, drop us a like. And then if you got more questions about it, or if you are going to be making that move here, make sure you reach out to us. Call, text, email, whatever it takes. Look, I love making the videos. I hope you can tell that I love it. Me and Kris both love making the videos for you here on the channel. I hope they're helpful, but we love it even more when we can help y'all make that move here. And we've got you covered on both sides of the Tennessee and Mississippi sides of the state line. So wherever you go in the area, we can get you taken care of and get you moved here to the area and make that move as smooth as possible. But let's move on to the things that are going to really affect everybody, even if you don't live in the city of Memphis. If you move to, let's say you move to Arlington, Lakeland, Germantown, Millington, even in some cases on the Mississippi side, South Haven, Olive Branch, okay? And the first one is the weather, all right? Yes, I talk about the weather usually in a positive outlook because I like the weather here. I like it warm, and maybe you drop me a comment. Do you like it warm or do you like it cold? Do you like the snow? Do you like to shovel snow? Or do you like to go outside in the summer and wear shorts every day and go jump in the pool and do that kind of stuff? That's me. I'd rather be warm pretty much any day, okay? And we have plenty of warmth here, but yes, it does get pretty hot and pretty humid in the summer. So you're going to have to be dealing with that. The number one way that we deal with it is, we're going to be running that AC a pretty good bit. But anytime you can get out in the water, we've got several places around that you can do that. If you got a pool, if you don't have a pool, get a friend that has a pool. That will help you get through that. But yes, it does get hot from July through, really just July and August are the worst. Sometimes parts of June on into September. But, the mornings are fine. It can be 70, 75, up to 80, and it's really not that bad, up until about noon. Yeah, it can get up above 80, and when it's humid, 85 and 90 feels a lot hotter than it is. So that's just something to be prepared for if you're coming from an area or part of the country where it's not as humid. It's just something to think about. And not just that, when it does get cold in the winter, and cold here is maybe not cold, if you're moving from Wisconsin or Michigan or somewhere like that, what we call cold, you may just go out in shorts. But the problem is that cold is going to feel colder, just like the heat feels hotter with the humidity, so does the cold. And that's something I think a lot of people don't realize. So just something to keep in mind. No, it doesn't get as cold as it does those other places. And no, you're really not going to be shoveling snow basically ever. You will maybe have some snow, but it's just, it's going to melt in a day or two. It's typically not even worth it to do that, and especially when you consider the fact that the entire city shuts down when it happens anyway. Now, the next one might actually impact you worse if you're outside the city of Memphis more than it will inside the city of Memphis, and that is our lack, really, of a robust public transportation system. Now, if you're in the city, we do have the bus network that runs, and we have a trolley, but it's really just right down there on Main Street. It's not something that you're commuting to work with, most likely, unless you live pretty close to downtown anyway. You're probably not on the trolley there. For the most part, if you're using the public transportation, you're going to be on the bus. Now, the bus does cover pretty much the entire city of Memphis, and outside of it just a little bit, but not very much. And if you're outside of that city, there's really not going to be much of a public transportation system for you at all. If you don't have a car, you're going to be walking, or you're going to be calling an Uber or something like that. So generally, I'm going to tell you, it's a very car dependent city. You're going to need a car. So if you're coming from somewhere, a bigger city where you just don't have to drive, you take a subway or you take a bus and that gets you everywhere you need to go, you're going to struggle with that here in Memphis. So just be prepared. You might want to be ready to have a car here available for you living in Memphis. Now with that, we've made it to the last couple things here on the list, and they both kind of tie together. First off, I'm talking about infrastructure here in the city, and that's pretty broad, okay? I could be talking about the fact that we do have quite a few potholes in parts of town, and that does exist, but that's not the one that really gets us the most. Coming from like the least to the most really bothersome, I guess. Moving up, if you're coming from somewhere up north, like we get this question. We've had people move from Canada, and they wonder why it's such a big deal of dealing with cold weather when it does come in. Well, number one, the houses themselves aren't really insulated in a way to handle that. So that's why we're dripping faucets and opening cabinets and these kind of things. And that plumbing a lot of times is running on those exterior walls. Or I think up north you don't tend to do that. The other thing though is the water lines themselves that are running, they're not buried to a depth to be below where it would potentially freeze when it could happen. So when it does freeze pretty hard for a few days, it can get some of those, especially some of the older water lines, and you can have problems with main breaks and things like that. It does happen. But the bigger deal that you can deal with pretty much any time of year is going to be more to do with the electrical side of things. And that's because, Memphis, there are a lot of trees around Memphis. So if you're not used to it, we got trees. Trees are everywhere. Some of them are big old trees, especially through the older parts of the city. And those power lines can easily be knocked down anywhere through there. Now, we don't get a ton of, I mentioned weather. We don't get a ton of tornadoes here. They can happen around, but it just doesn't happen quite as often as maybe some straight line winds come through with some storms. And those straight winds can knock down limbs on those old trees, on those power lines. And that's why you see, if you get on Facebook groups, you'll see the memes of, the wind just blows, and as soon as it does, the power is going to go out in Memphis. That can happen, especially in some parts of the area more than others. And that's going to lead to the last thing here that people really complain about a lot, and that is MLG&W. That's the utility provider here for the entire city of Memphis and a good chunk of the area beyond that. But the problem with MLG&W doesn't just end with the power outages themselves. It also extends to how long it can take sometimes for them to get that power back on, even after something that seems relatively minor. Some areas, it can take days to get the power back on. And then add to that frustration, you're also getting just ridiculous bills sometimes. They've had people get bills just thousands and thousands of dollars, and they can't always explain it. And it's just a hassle to go back and forth with them to finally figure out what it was and get those things adjusted. So it's just really just a big hassle, and you're not seeing just excellent service on the front end, and then you kind of got the back end service isn't there either. So if I hear one thing more than anything else, it's probably complaints about the utilities and MLG&W here in Memphis. But as bad as all that might sound, utilities here in Memphis are still among some of the lowest in the country, and that goes along with the entire cost of living being pretty low as well, which was one of the big reasons I talked about in my video about why I still think Memphis is, well, really why 2024 is the best year possibly ever to move to Memphis. And so if you're thinking about moving here, and if I haven't turned you away from it, maybe even if I did, go watch this one here, and maybe I'll change your mind back.